Here is a drawing I made pencil and inks of Usopp, brothers and sisters, and it was colored by Mugen the Stray Dog. So if you like this type of drawing and more, remember to follow me on Google+, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. One Piece Chapter 220. A Walk on the Seafloor.
Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome, the magical, the adventurous tale of One Piece. Our last chapter, of course, saw us with really the introduction of Masira, the Salvage King, and just kind of showing the comedic side of Oda's personality, as we have Zoro and Sanji and Luffy gone down in these you know, kind of homemade, Usopp-made diving suits, I guess you'd say, and they have been beating up Masira's crew, his salvage crew, and Nami is just kind of flirting with him and pretending to, you know, to play nice, like they're just there to, they just want to watch the salvage operation, you know, so trying to avoid danger and the fighting at all costs, you know, so very comical. And again, the end of it was just kind of like, you know, just kind of left us with now they're going to try to, he's going to send down this other crew to get everything ready for this the salvage cradle and what have you. And we're thinking, okay, but they haven't gotten word to Sanji and Zoro and Luffy, you know, stop beating these guys up. And they're trying to, of course, and then that's where the chapter leaves off. That's really where the chapter picks up as well. It is kind of funny because we go and we see, you know, he's kind of waving across at them and smiling, and he kind of, you know, he's got this flirtatious thing going with Nami, it seems like, and really it just seems like this Masira is more of a lighthearted, goofy character. He seems to be one of those guys that sort of takes things out of context, you know, when they say, oh, you're a monkey, and you know, he says, oh, you think I'm hunky, or you think this, oh, you think I'm handsome, and he hears what he wants to hear, you know, and it's funny because he's talking across to them about, he's telling his crew not to worry, we got some onlookers, we got some spectators, just act normal type of thing, you know, like they're on a reality show or something, you know, and it's funny because we got, you know, Nami and Usopp are over there, and Usopp looks at Chopper and is like, you know, make sure he doesn't see the, you know, the oxygen lines, you know, we got going down there, right? Because he might put two and two together and figure out that it's our guys that are down there, which, in my opinion, he would have already figured out, but again, this is a goofier, lighthearted character. So we then go and we're taken to the bottom of the sea floor, and we see Luffy, Zoro, and Sanji walking around and kind of exploring the remnants of this huge galleon that had sunk, and we see you know, Luffy going to grabs this pot, this container, and it crumbles. You know, obviously it's a couple hundred years old. You know, there's bones and debris strewn everywhere. We see Zoro goes in and finds a sword, and as he goes to pull it out of its scabbard, the thing just sort of like crumbles and falls apart, you know what I mean? So obviously just from the 200 plus years, you know, that the ship has presumably been floating around or what have you, things have deteriorated. And then we see Sanji, the love-struck idiot that he can be sometimes, and he goes and finds this picture of a pretty girl, you know, and it's got it actually looks like, because it looks like there's something stabbed through it, and then he goes and he looks, so I don't know if this was from, maybe this ship was attacked, and that's how this happened, or we don't really know yet exactly why it happened. I don't know if it's ever going to really come to light either, but it appears the way everything was drawn after Sanji saw that, he looks in this room and it appears that there's other you know, spears or knives or something, looks like they're stuck in a couple spots on the walls, so it looks as if maybe this crew ultimately met their end from, you know, from some unknown enemy yet that we have yet to meet. So again, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but that's just what it appears to be in the way that I took from it, from the way it was drawn. So then we go and we see they you know, they kind of go up and they're inside, of course, the ship. There's a funny part too where Zoro's got like this little almost like octopus, squid, something like that sticking on his head, you know, and Luffy's trying to swat it off. But then they're sitting there, and all of a sudden, you know, a giant crash comes in through the wall, and they're like, what the hell, you know? And it winds up going, then they show the outside of the ship, and Masira had sent down his salvage crew, of course, telling them to be careful of these people that are down there beating up crew members, and we see this the way his salvage operation works. They drop down this giant cradle that looks almost like spider legs, because there's 4 or 5 on each side that have these hooks, and they hook into the side of the ship to grip onto the sides of the ship or what have you. And then it goes and it shows it goes back up to the top, you know, and we see Usopp and Chopper. I couldn't remember his name for the life of me. And I don't know where the hell Robin went during this whole thing either. I didn't see her in many of the pictures drawn either. I don't know what she's got going on. But anyway, that's besides the point. So Chopper and Usopp are like, oh, and they look at the prow of the ship, which is this monkey, of course, and they're like, what's with that monkey, you know? And he's like, oh, you think I'm hunky? And I think that's when he said it, or maybe he said it later on when he runs into Luffy or what have you. I forget, but at some point he says something like that. But he goes and he explains, says this is no normal prow. So they show that the prow of the ship, he goes, you know, release it or drop it down. This prow of the ship looks like one of the one of those monkeys that have the symbols, you know, that you wind them up, right? So they go and they drop this, and that's what Masira appears like too, except for he's got some headphones on, so he looks like one of those monkeys with maybe some really cool what do you call it, Beats by Dr. Dre or whatever. So he goes and he drops this thing down in there, and it's cool because it shows how this thing goes down, and then it actually attaches. It goes and locks in, makes a connection, attaches to the top of the cradle that was lowered down earlier. So the cradle was lowered down from one cable. This thing comes down from another cable. And I believe the reason that this comes down, and I'm just kind of trying to figure this out from the way the mechanism was drawn and everything, because then the next thing that winds up happening, he's like, okay, we're going to raise the ship. And, you know, he's like, really? He's going to do it with his breath? What are you talking about? And all of a sudden he goes, and, you know, and the ship starts raising up. He's pumping air into the ship. So obviously the ship, even though it's kind of weird because it's cracked and almost looks like it's cracked in half. So I have no idea how he's actually pumping air into the ship that's not just flowing right out. But, hey, whatever, that's fine. You know, this is Oda's world. It's not mine. Who am I to judge? I'm just going by, you know, what I saw. Because it took me a little bit to figure it out. I was like, what the hell is he doing? Is there, maybe he's like blowing up a giant balloon that was underwater, and that balloon is then pulling it up. So that's the only thing that I could think of, is that maybe there was some kind of bag or something underneath that he was blowing into, creating, obviously, the air to be in there to cause the ship to float up and to pull upwards. So, but he's also got his men pulling on it. He's telling them more air and everything else. So, and then we go and we see Zoro, Luffy, and Sanji down in the ship, and they're like, whoa, there's air. So there's actually air inside the ship now. They've been able to take off their diving apparatus, you know, these barrels, these little, you know, Usopp concocted barrels, and they're able to, you know, and they're kind of talking a little bit amongst themselves, and they're like, hey, what's going on? There's air, you know. So it's kind of neat, though, because then we go, and as this thing is getting raised up, we have one of Masira's, you know, crewmen or whatever that comes up from that diving crew, that cradle crew, comes up and is like, you know, boss, you know, there's people inside the ship, right? So Masira's like getting pissed off, you know. He's, oh man, who's coming to mess with my salvage, you know? And then they go and they show Nami over there, and they're like, is he posing? We're not taking pictures or anything, she says, you know, and it looks like he's posing, you know. And I think it's just that he's kind of like, when he gets excited, he starts like dancing around, you know. So she thought that he was like posing for pictures. Maybe he was, I don't know. But anyway, he's like, I'm gonna go take care of this shit. So Masira goes and dives down into the ocean or whatever. As the ship's still being pulled up, he tells everybody, continue pulling the ship up. You know, I'm gonna go take care of this shit, right? So he dives down into there, and then on the way down, as he's getting towards the ship, there's like this giant sea snake or whatever that goes to come at him, and he's just like, boom, and just runs right through it, man. Jacks it up with one of his Super Masira Salvage King monkey punches. That's not actually what it's called, but I just kind of make these things up on the fly sometimes. So he winds up nailing this thing or what have you, and then we go and we see, of course, you know, Zoro, Luffy, and Sanji, and they're talking amongst themselves about what's going on. There's, you know, why is there air in here? What the hell's the deal? We're being raised up, and then all of a sudden Masira goes and just busts in, you know, and he's like, what the, you know, this and that. So Luffy goes, oh, look, a monkey. And then that's actually when he goes, oh, what, you think I'm hunky? And Luffy's like, oh, no, but you're pretty smart, you know. They start talking to him, and you think there's going to maybe be some kind of confrontation or fight. But as I said at the beginning of this, you know, review, Masira seems to be kind of more of a lighthearted character, because then you go and you see in the next page, they're all sitting around, they're getting along, they're bullshitting, they're all sitting around eating some bananas or what have you. And they're not actually, they're just sitting around talking. And Masira's like, oh, really? So you're all from the East Blue and this and that. And it's kind of funny because, again, they're just, you know, it's like they've just became instant buddies, you know. And Luffy, for the most part, he just has that kind of likable personality, you know, like if you want to go and you want to fight him, like he'll fight you, you know, but for the most part, like, you know, he'd rather just chill and like eat some meat with you and talk, you know what I mean, and just hang out and shit and have a party, you know. That would be his preferable way of going, you know. He'll fight if he has to, if he's confronted, or if somebody threatens one of his crewmates, you know, or something along those lines. But anyway, that's just what I took from it. So the chapter winds up ending up shortly after that. While they're talking and everything, they show this panel of this giant, I don't know if it's like a sea turtle or something like that, but this thing's huge, right? I mean, 20 times the size of the galleon that they're being pulled, that they're being pulled up, to the surface, and this thing is coming right for them or whatever, and what have you. And then they're in there, they're talking again, and then all of a sudden the last panel of the pages, this thing chomps down on them. Wires are still hanging out, pulling up and everything. So I don't know what the hell is going on over here, but certainly a very, very cool thing. So that's how the chapter ends. And ultimately, that kind of leads into my chapter question over here is, what do you think of Masira the Salvage King? I don't know how long of a part he plays in this whole journey, if it is a temporary one, 2 chapters, 5 chapters, 10 chapters, don't really know. But personally, I think he's kind of refreshing as opposed to almost every character that they've run into. I think Gaiman was probably the last character I can think of that they ran into randomly way back in the East Blue that, kind of started out, you thought he was going to be an enemy, and then they turned out to kind of be buddies, afterwards. But it seems like a lot of characters in between, many of them have been very negatively impactful characters, Wapol comes to mind, obviously, when they ran into him before the Drum Kingdom, then, of course, on the Drum Kingdom. So what are your thoughts on Masira the Salvage King as a character, is the question, chapter question. Leave your answer in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching all of you in the next one, nation.
Here is the Usopp without the collar. Usopp, hammer.